What does it take to make workshops work? And how can we facilitate collaboration that sticks and leads to results? My name is Miriam Hatness, and with the Workshops Work podcast, I am on the mission to find the magic ingredients that make workshops work. Today with me on the show is Jacinta Cubis, and we talk about bad online meetings and good online meetings and how to make difficult conversations hum, which does not necessarily mean that we make them all too easy and boring. So stay tuned. And by the way, if you don't have pen and paper at hand to take your own notes, why don't you visit workshops.work and download my one-page summary? And now enjoy the show. Jacinta, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Miriam.
I am so excited to talk to you. After I read your ebook, Hum, about how to have better conversations in online meetings. So I'm very curious to learn more about the backgrounds and your experience and to share with the audience, obviously. And before we are getting there, I always like to start with the question, when did you start calling yourself a facilitator?
That really struck me last night. And it's actually, I don't know when, but I do know when I think I noticed that, that's what I do. So when I was employed at a university, I was doing a leadership program, and the trainer said to me, "You're a facilitator." And I went, what's that? Because we'd done an exercise, and I don't know what it was on, but it was appreciative inquiry, like what works, what's working, how can we, this sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. And I just grabbed a butcher's paper and a bit of pen like I always do, and I drew my stuff and then shared that with the group, and Moira said, "You're a facilitator." Now, that was in 2012, I think, mm-hmm. But I've been doing that for a long time internally. So I guess that's when I was first called one. But I recall in 1999 sitting around a table at a job when I was first in a job, and I brought together the national directors of this fairly dysfunctional organisation to help me do a national campaign. And it was great, and lots of ideas were buzzing, and I was very young, but I just brought them together because I needed their help. And I thought, you bring people together, don't you, to share ideas? And a woman who'd been at the organisation a long time was right down the other end, and she said, "This has never happened before." So in retrospect, I'm sure you've had similar experience. In retrospect, I've been doing it my whole career, but I probably only got labelled about 8 years ago. Mm. But that first story was that's 25 years ago. So, yeah. Wonderful. But I've been practicing on my own for about 6 years.
Wonderful. Yeah, and I think the concept of what facilitation is and what the profession actually embraces is still quite vague and quite new.
Yeah, because I speak French and I've heard it called to make easy, but I think it's much more than that. I think it's to make sense as well and to connect. And I don't think it's about necessarily making easy, particularly if you have challenging conversations. I in fact have had to learn not to smooth. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and it's a temptation to smooth, yeah. Mm-hmm. But that is making it easy, isn't it? So I don't think it's a direct translation to make it easy. I think it makes it possible for people to have conversations. Accessible, that's probably, a better interpretation. It is a funny word.
It is, and I like the translation of making things easy, although I wouldn't understand it in the literal way, because I think creating space for difficult conversations to happen does not mean just smoothing them out and avoiding, but helping them to happen, actually.
Yeah. And in fact, it reminds me of my book and my drawings, because someone said to me they make it really easy to talk about the hard stuff. Mm-hmm. And I thought, that's another nice way to talk about facilitation.
Yeah, making it easy to talk about what really matters. And it reminds me of an interview I had with Colleen Panier. She's a video game designer.
Oh.
And we're talking about challenges and that it's important to create these obstacles or challenges in a workshop. So it's basically the opposite of easy, and still at the end, it makes the conversation easy or finding a solution easy.
It's like disrupting, like to get people to contribute, react, or out of their comfort zone is you have to put a few little obstacles or blocks or disruptions in their way. Yeah.
Provocation. Gentle provocations.
Yeah.
Nice. And you mentioned your book.
Yes. Hum.
Yes. Tell me where does the name Hum come from? And what triggered you to write this book?
So it's a lockdown story. So I'm currently talking to you from Melbourne, and we're in, I call it countdown now, countdown number 2. And
that's an optimistic view.
We may not get out for another month. So the first lockdown was really tough, I think. And a mentor I work with said, I think let's just find a bit of joy in your life. You know, what brings you joy? And I said, drawing. And she said, well, can you just draw some stuff? And I said, well, I've got 24 little drawings. I had a bad online meeting, one of those bad experiences as a participant, I think. And I just drew a couple of things that annoyed me about it, and then it became a bigger list. So she said, if that brings you joy, just do that. So it was to bring myself some joy. And in doing some of the problems with online meetings and experiences and workshops, I then realised, well, I have to draw the fixes or suggest some fixes. And it had to be quick. So that's where it came from, to bring a little bit of joy. And I also thought it might be practical for people, but it was at the beginning, about maybe a month into lockdown, and I thought, by the time it came out, I had an editor to help me, and I got a graphic designer to make my pictures pretty, but they're still my pictures. And I thought when it came out, it's too late, but the reaction has been pretty positive. And I think people still need help. The word hum is because I actually wrote the first sentence, I think, is something like, I should know it by heart, but get your online meetings humming. Let's get them humming. And I was struggling for a title and brainstorming with someone. And I said, I want your online meetings to work or to whatever, and to just drive along. Like, she said, hum. And I went, that's in my first sentence. Like the answer's right there in your own work, hey? Talk about typical facilitator. You're meant to draw out people's best thinking, and I needed someone else to draw out mine. So hum I loved because it's onomatopoeic. You can feel it. Hum. It's a good feeling. So I thought it would catch people's eye as well as easy to remember. And actually, in a conversation today with a potential client, I could say to her, are your meetings, are your workshops, do they just hum along like a new car, or are there a few niggles under the bonnet? Is it working but not really well? Does it need a service? And she said, so what do you do? And I said, well, I'll come in and give it a service. I'll come in and service your online meetings like a virtual mechanic. And she said, yeah. So and then I could draw a little picture with overalls and tools and things. And she said, I love the car metaphor. She said, I have 5 teams and their meetings, they are humming along like new cars. But put them together, she said, they're all on a different road. And she said, she said, that one has completely lost their keys. They can't find their keys. That one is lost on a back road. And this is all her words, right? That one is going 100 miles an hour and no one can catch up with it. And that one is going round in circles. She said, I want them all on the same road going towards the same destination. And that was brilliant. So she did that herself. So for me, that's a good sign that if people pick up on hum and the car metaphor, it works.
Totally. Oh, thank you for sharing that. That's really inspiring.
Oh, good. I also use bikes because I actually don't have a car. I've driven, but I also use, if I in the pandemic or just before, I was riding my bike and it felt really sluggish, and I hadn't had it serviced for a while. So I use that story as well for your meetings. Are just like you've got to keep your bike well tuned, and same for your cars as well. And if you don't, they'll break down. And if they break down, you have to call roadside assistance, right? But if they really break down and are beyond repair, all you can do is call the tow truck.
Very true. And there are two things that I would like to unpack from what you said. One is to get back to your experience of this bad meeting and to hear more about what made it bad. And the other thing is when I hear hum in your explanation, the smooth flow of a meeting, this sounds easy. So how do you then combine humming with having these difficult conversations?
That's a great question. Wow, do I know the answer to that? I'll go back to your first one. And your first question was, remind me.
Your bad meeting.
The bad meeting.
That kicked it off, yeah.
Well, it was actually at an international conference, and it started off with some expert design gurus who were taking us, the participants, through a process. And I was curious because it was right at the start, and I wanted to see how they used Zoom to get us to collaborate. And it was appalling. These people are design experts, and we hadn't met each other, our little group, and we were thrown into a breakout room to do something. And I don't know what the instructions were, because there was a page of it was, 1, 2, 3. Just give me 3 instructions, maybe. Please use imperatives like draw, talk, discuss. Give me a verb. It was a plethora of language. And we found ourselves in this breakout room, me, someone from Singapore, someone from somewhere else. And we wasted a lot of time. What are we supposed to be doing? And because I was there to experience using Zoom a bit better, so I found a whiteboard and I started to draw, and we got excited by that, but we didn't do the exercise. And it actually made me write a blog saying, don't assume that your people know how to use whatever materials or whatever process or whatever platform you're on. And I thought it was poor facilitation. It wasn't to disrupt. They were really disappointed that we didn't have anything to report. And I thought it was a lack of awareness of your participants and where they're at. So that was one bad example. And that led to me noticing as a participant, because at the beginning of the pandemic, I don't know if you were as well, but I went to a lot of webinars and the number of slides and the number of talks I went to. Again, another international guru who hadn't tested any of his tech. I spent a lot of time talking from England, talking about, can you see this? Is that there? He should have tested his tech. We paid for this. And then he read his slides. Oh, please.
We can read.
Please. Yeah, and I know this is really so simple, right? But it was enough to get my levels of frustration up going, wow, this is an international guru on whatever, and he can't even, I just left. And then other times, I think the particularly bad one was when I was in so I guess it's accumulation. I say one bad online meeting, but it was a series. And I was in a breakout room, and if the facilitator doesn't give, I think you have to be more directive online, which sits a bit at odds with following the group. But I think to help the group, you have to be a bit more directive. And in the breakout rooms, it sounds a bit sexist, but 7 out of 10 times, if the man starts, then he just keeps talking. And no one else has time to speak. And that happened a number of times with a particular group of men in these breakout rooms I was in. I was thinking, if I was in a face-to-face room, I would just walk away. At that stage, we didn't know how to leave breakout rooms, or I couldn't leave, or it would have looked too rude. And I felt really like my time was wasted. I felt annoyed that no one else we didn't have the tools or the confidence to say, hey, we've learned that a bit more now, I think, but it still happens. It still happens. And just boring meetings where it just turns into an update because
basically an email.
And I'm sort of going, why are we even here? Like, why are we even here? That could have been done another way.
Yeah.
Not an update. And I've been in sessions with co-facilitators. We're all facilitators, and I drew a group together to try and help us learn with each other about the different platforms. And again, it was really interesting. Blokes is an Australian word, could not tell that they were talking over the three other women and constantly jumped in. And so it was a jumping in and the inability to interrupt and not pausing for 1 or 2 seconds just to let someone else have a go. And how do you interrupt that tennis match? So that where you're just watching a tennis match. Yeah. So there's enough, I think. Probably your editor might cut some of that out, but
no, I think it's all very valuable.
Accumulation of poor facilitation, unaware facilitation, unaware participants, and using a online platform to replicate the very worst of face-to-face meetings anyway.
Yeah.
It's amplified. I think I put in my book that online meetings have pulled the covers back on what was bad about face-to-face meetings, and hooray, opportunity to fix it, but not always.
Yeah. Yeah, not only meetings, also all the processes and communication channels, because I have the impression that now there are many online meetings that are basically just emails read out.
Yeah.
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 If there's only one person speaking, don't call it a meeting.
No. And I had an interesting conversation. Shall I just mention this story? Stop me if you've had enough of this content. But today I was talking to someone about her difficult community meeting last night, and it became apparent she got hum, she liked it, she shared it with people. And it became apparent that the meeting they had last night that she was so nervous about was it was just an information session. They were conveying information to 50 community members online. And I gently said, it's classic, isn't it, how you learn? I said, so how does that work? What sort of feedback do you get from community members? And she said, there's a lot of energy. And I said, oh, really? So how does that work? In the chat. So in the chat box.
So people are not listening.
Well, there's no way for them to talk. Yeah. Because I said, and how did it go and what were the biggest issues? Or one of the presenters couldn't get his video to work. And I said, you had presenters. And how did that go down? So it's a very controversial topic. I understand that sometimes you have to convey information that way to a large group, but I said, maybe do you do that other ways? Can you provide that beforehand? And no awareness that perhaps there's another way to do that. And my heart went out to the community members, because if they're worried about something happening in their local area, and this is how they've been communicated with. Yeah. And she said that questions and answers, they take questions and then they respond to them later. How does that strike you?
Why would you have a live meeting if you answer the questions later, not live?
I know. It's a town hall meeting. It's a classic town hall meeting. It's pointless.
Yeah.
Just pointless. Yeah.
So I would like to come back to two things that you said. One is the example with mostly men, and I must admit that I experienced similar situations. So what is there that we can do as participants, as facilitators, and maybe even as those who speak too much? Because I truly believe that they don't do it on purpose. They lack awareness. And so what is there that we can do to avoid that, or structure it, or facilitate it?
That's so interesting. And you would know, you would have ideas. But I've just had this conversation with a man, and he I could hear his voice. He said, what do I do? How do I do that? Because he was looking to stop the boys from the men from dominating and looking to understand how to better facilitate the breakout rooms. And I could hear in his voice a bit of, how do I do that? And I thought, wow, people really don't know. Mm-hmm. And for him, from a facilitator perspective, it was just very simple suggestions for the breakout rooms. I explained that, in my opinion, I think you need to be more directive online. And I said, so when you're sending people to the breakout rooms, perhaps limit your instructions to 3 and put an imperative at the front. Discuss, start, write, something. Nominate a timekeeper, the person with the shortest hair. The person who goes first. The person who goes first. He said, should I say the women should go first? I said, no, like there's any number of ways. So let's start with alphabetical, first name, alphabetical, second name. Person with the shortest hair, person with the brightest top on, person with a pen in their hand, something. But you need to allocate a timekeeper, I think, at the beginning, and you need to allocate who's going to go first. And I think either the timekeeper keeps time, but also you can personally take responsibility and put your own timer on. And a minute is not long. So 8 minutes in a breakout room, 1 minute for them to connect and do their faffing around, into work, 3 people in a breakout room, no more, 4 if you have to, and then you're going to get into trouble. But 3 in a breakout room, do the math, and then tell them how long they've got each. And if you've got a session, this person has a series of workshops over a 3-month period, build their behaviour, because you're going to have the same participants. So let's start off quite directive, build that behaviour, and then maybe you can loosen it off in week 2 or week 3 or breakout room, breakout 3 or something, breakout 2 or 3, and say you choose a timer or you keep your own time or something like that, or you decide how. Maybe they could build up to that to build the capacity in participants to self-manage. But yeah, it struck me how he didn't know, and how these simple things about directing a breakout room are not known by everyone. And it's a fairly easy skill to teach. Is it a skill? I don't know. It's fairly easy instructions to give. And then it just takes practice to do it. And I was actually in one of the sessions that he was doing after a few tips. And in the chat, I said, hey, next time, tell us how long we've got. And he went, yep, thanks. So who is mentoring you while you're doing it? Who's just helping you while you're doing it? Yeah, so maybe that's always the case for having 2 facilitators. So how do we do that is back to your question about, is the person facilitating or training or presenting, do they know how to? I think you can start with breakout rooms, because I've been talking with Rebecca Southerns, who I think you know, in Canada.
Yes, I interviewed her. Yeah.
So we're doing this riff together, this series of riffs, and we talked about the pros and cons of breakout rooms. And while they're beautiful to go deep fast, and they're wonderful because that annoying mosquito facilitator doesn't buzz around and get in the way, I think that's good, right? But by the same token, we can't see what's going on in the breakout room always. If they're working on a Google Doc or something, maybe you can, but we can't see that. Whereas live, face-to-face, I've been able to, I'm sure you have as well, invite someone to leave a table if that person is dominating. And I literally have left the 2 dominant people in a community engagement workshop on a table by themselves.
This works.
And the others, and the others have just left. But I've just done it with a gentle bit of eye movement, like, would you like to? And they've gone, I've gone, so. And the dominant people haven't even noticed, But how do I do that in a breakout room? So I think that's why we need to be more directive. And I think this person in particular, it might be a good idea for them to seek feedback, 1 or 2 quick questions at the end, put it in chat. How was a breakout room? Equal, how would you rate it? Like, what's the word that you're looking for, depending on what culture you're trying to set up? I got to talk. I didn't get to talk. Time was even. I don't know, whatever that is, but you could measure that, I think. Is that, have I answered your question?
Absolutely. And I think as a facilitator, sending messages into the breakout room to just, as a gentle reminder, okay, maybe you want to switch. be aware that everyone speaks in these kind of prompts. And
Do you think people notice those words, though? I think they're hard to see, depending on the platform, I guess.
Yeah, I think on Zoom it's gentle. It's not like a slap in the face.
That's true. Yeah. That's a good point, but I also noticed that I think because I'm a facilitator, I see that. I don't know if everyone sees that.
Yeah.
And it's not just I feel bad saying, well, no, I shouldn't feel bad. The men do tend to dominate. But there's also the other type of person who overshares too much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know them.
So it's airtime. It's airtime, right? Mm-hmm. It's how do you stop? And it's one of your questions, I think. How do we negotiate people taking up too much space online?
So how can we do this in a gentle way?
I think it would be, and I've been playing with this, is to model how not to do it and then ask people what they saw. So if you had a little fishbowl happening where you and a co-facilitator could model it, responding to a question, one of you just goes on and on and on and on and tells you about what happened to them when they were 15 and what happened to them when they were, blah, 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 blah. And you could check in with the group. So how was that conversation? Oh, well, Jacinta talked for too long. So, and then you might name that. Oversharing, why it's a good idea to model what you want the participants to do, perhaps. So I think maybe modelling and doing it badly as the facilitator so they can call you out on it. Possibly. Yeah, might be one. If you were going to work with it's easier if you're going to work with a group over a period of months, I think. You can establish how we work together, how we Zoom. Yeah. What do you think?
I think it's a difficult one. So usually my first thing is that I start moving around and using my hands, kind of giving prompts. Sometimes it already works. Sometimes it doesn't. It definitely works better in the physical space. What I like to experiment with is to ask people to use the full screen. And then so that if I have to look at my own face for the time that I'm speaking. Maybe this makes me aware that I'm speaking to myself and taking too much space, literally.
That's a great idea. I also just reminded myself, yes, because it's uncomfortable, isn't it, to go like right in there and you're really dominating, aren't you? I also have used a tennis ball, like to show I've explained or they've used hum, and I talk about that feeling of being at a tennis match where everyone else is watching two people speak.
Yeah.
So can you agree as a group signs for gentle, possibly light-hearted, humorous reminders like I should have brought one out with me because I was going to, but a tennis ball, just to show them that you're playing tennis. And in a group, if you're working together as a group, what are the top 5 things that annoy you in online meetings? Draw them. You've got your own cards. You can hold them up, remind each other, take responsibility.
Yeah, coming back to what you said earlier, we have to be so much more explicit in online meetings because the body language, and we don't know what's going on in the space of the other person, so they might be distracted, not even see it. So I think agreeing at the beginning of a meeting to just these prompts, okay, when I show the tennis ball, maybe you want to reflect, or if I raise my hand, maybe your time is up. Really having a timer, a physical timer in the screen just to show them.
And I learned a really nice thing from a team leader in Canberra who has worked remotely for years. So he works for a large Australian government department. He's not a facilitator, but he beautifully uses his wheelie chair. So he's the team leader and all his people are in Canberra and he's in Queensland or something. When he's listening, he is like way back. Like he's way back. He's on his little wheelie. He's listening, but he's way back. And when he wants to speak, he zooms in on his wheelie chair and they know, oh, Nathan wants to speak. So he's managed to use the space, but it's so simple, right? But I think we can use the space a lot more, as you're saying. So if as if you're live in the room as a facilitator, it's so nice to move around, isn't it, and get away from the front of the room.
Yeah.
And if you and they're chatting away, but it's the minute that you walk into their space, into the center of a circle or something, it shifts the energy and they know that, oh, we're about to change, or maybe this bit is winding up. So I think we can, you did it before, like if we move around, and if I just remember that young man on his wheelie chair, I do have a room I can use perhaps a bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah. And was there something else I was going to say? No, it was agreeing yourself and coming up with symbols that are lighthearted and gentle and soft. But how do you do that in a really difficult conversation when there's polarized views? That's harder.
Hi, this is Andrew. I'm a facilitator and head of customer success at Session Lab, the dynamic workshop planner tool. More than 30,000 facilitators, trainers and coaches use our workshop planner tool and save time and effort in the design process. So, how do they do it? Our drag and drop agenda builder makes it easy to transform your ideas into high-quality workshops, and the timing of your agenda automatically updates when you make changes. You can collaborate in real time with your colleagues and easily share professional-looking printouts with your clients. And if you need inspiration, you can check out our library of more than 500 activities and exercises and simply drag the ones you need right into your workshop agenda. So check out Session Lab to save time and effort in your workshop design process. And now get your first 2 months of Session Lab Pro absolutely free at sessionlab.com/workshopswork.
I think that a lot of times, especially in the difficult conversations, if you start with a breakout room and you give these individuals who usually take a lot of space time to take the space in a breakout room, it's annoying for 2 people, but it's not annoying for 20.
Yeah,
because usually true. Once they come out, they shared enough. And
yeah. They got it off their chest. Yeah. I don't know if it's so different online as face-to-face. I draw a table and online it would go out well before and be a really big picture, and I would remind them what's on the table and what's off. And we generally know what people really want to talk about, and if it's off the table, we can make that very clear. And so if they keep bringing it up, it's like, that's great, but that's off the table. And to the extreme, I will say, would you like to go and chat with expert A from the organisation about that thing? And they never want to leave the room. They want to stay. Yeah, so being very clear about what's on and off the table and actually having it visually there, I think is helpful.
I like the idea.
Yeah. And go on.
I was just thinking, it's also very often in the structure of the meeting or the workshop, whether we do provide a stage or not. So if they're coming back from the breakout room, don't ask everyone to share their opinion, but just the summary of the breakout room. So, and then they don't even have the stage to overshare their own opinions or ideas. Yeah,
no microphone. And I guess I've never done this. Have you ever muted someone who's talking for too long?
Oh, no.
No, neither have I. but I wonder
so
if...
rude.
It does, doesn't it? But I wonder if a group, I've never done it, but I wonder if a group would ever agree to having that, like, hey, if we're talking tennis match, we can talk about umpires, maybe. Don't know. And there's also something that I learned from a wonderful facilitator, Max Hardy. I've done deliberative processes with him, so similar to citizens' juries, and he does a beautiful thing at the start with this group who have elected to be there. It's going to be quite challenging and over a long period, complex topic. And he has a picture of a sponge that he puts up, and he says, everyone has an opinion, or I'm paraphrasing him here, but he asks people to be like a sponge. Just, you're going to get a lot of information, absorb it all. Just, I know you've got your opinions, but please take it in. Just take it in. And when they're recruited, Nivek Thompson from Deliberately Engaging does a beautiful job of interviewing potential participants and making sure they understand it's a deliberation. So you'll have very firm views, I'm sure, but how open are you to hearing other views? And of course, people will say, I'm very open, but they've been alerted to the fact. So,
Dissonance.
Yeah.
Of course.
So I guess we can prepare each other somehow and then call it if they don't, I hate the word obey, but if they don't
follow the instructions.
Yeah, and keep the spirit of the the intent of the group. Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's respect.
Yeah, true.
Respect. I was wondering at one point, I had a conversation with the founder of Toasty, this new video conferencing tool.
Yeah.
And I asked whether it would be possible to have a timer so that we agree that everyone only speaks for a minute and then there's a timer. And when
beautiful.
the timer's up, you're just muted.
And?
I think they haven't done it yet. And I wonder how other facilitators would think about it, because I think it would take away the facilitator of being in this bad position of muting someone, which is very rude. And if you can just say, okay, we agreed that this is our rule, and then it's the system taking care of that, then people have to be short, no matter what.
Yeah, but I was in a very nice, one of the best sessions I was in was when the facilitator modeled a virtual speaking table. And you draw it, like you write the name down, so you're engaging from the start, and you keep the time, and everyone did it. You know, it's just very clear. And a minute is a long time.
Yeah.
You know, it's for the particular discussion we were having. And I've avoided your question about hum and disrupt.
I was about to come back to that. You read my mind.
And so what would be, I'm wondering if I could find a metaphor, and I hadn't thought about this, but it could be a bit like surfing. Or, and I'm not a very good surfer, but I love the sort of metaphor of it. It is, or that feeling of when you're skiing, you know, that just beautiful. And then, what do you call those little things? Moguls, you know, or a bit of ice or something else. And I think that's part of the expectational part of the journey. You don't want to have a run that just goes, that's a bit boring, isn't it? You want to be able to go around circles and, oh, there's a tree, whoop, and find your way and test your skills. And, maybe that's a good metaphor. Or like surfing, it's beautiful and wonderful, and then a huge wave will come along, and then there'll be rocks, and then but it's the thrill of the experience, isn't it? So if you're coming together to collaborate or partner, you want it to hum along like a new car, in terms of, we know it's safe to have a conversation, we're not holding back, we're clear that what our objectives are. They can be different. And I guess it means it's working well. Our conversation is going somewhere. It doesn't mean it's 100 miles an hour and no one has time to stop. I don't know if that helps. I haven't really thought about it. What do you think? What comes to you? What pops into your head?
What I hear from you saying is that it's, so the humming part is the process. So yes, there will be eyes, but it's smooth to go through the eyes.
Yeah, confident to go through it.
We make it safe, so you won't break your neck.
Yeah, so that's a nice way of putting it. Well done. Yes, because there you go. Yes, I would not go on a long distance trip in my car unless I knew it was well serviced, right? So I'm also not going to go for a 25K bike ride unless I know the tyres are pumped up. So there you go. That might be it. And you know that it's going to be hard. You know that you're going to have to fill up along the way, you know. Yeah, it gives you the confidence, doesn't it? Yeah. If everything is... So what that means is, for a meeting or for a workshop, we know why we're all here. You know, the purpose is very clear. We feel safe to play with the technology and not yell at each other if someone gets it wrong. But we have also prepared and we've tested. So we're as comfortable with the tech as we can be. In terms of communications, we have a facilitator or a chair, or people know how to do that. They've prepared. No one's winging it. Like you've prepared you've come prepared to contribute, and you listen to each other. There's respect. There's not talking over each other, that sort of thing. And etiquette we don't have the window open behind us and our sound is working and we have all that stuff with etiquette. So as long as all those little things, and they are annoying little things, but purpose is huge, if you can sort of tick all those off, then you can get started on a potentially disruptive conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think from a facilitator's perspective is the difference between guiding through a difficult conversation online and offline? And the reason why I'm asking is I have the impression that difficult conversations, we don't like them. We feel threatened. So usually we go into fight, flight, or freeze. But fighting through the screen is a waste of energy. I rather turn my computer off and blame the bandwidth, or I zone out and turn the camera off. So zoning out in difficult conversations seems to me more the rule in online meetings than offline.
And like my colleague or the guy I referred to, I've got a picture in Hum where one of the people has just pushed their chair off and they're going out the door. Yeah. And I've got a sign saying, "Go on fishing." Like, that's it. I'm just going. How do we work with that as a facilitator? So I don't know if there is one, or I don't know if there's a rule or rules. It's, again, like, I think a good analogy for facilitation is tango, because you're alternately following and leading, aren't you? You're like the infinity sign. And so it depends what is happening, what's right before you, how you work with that, not deal with it, how you work with it. And if I don't know how to work with it, I think I fall back on, I don't know how to work with this. I'm stuck. Does anyone else feel stuck? Or is it just me? Like, I think I have to say what I'm sensing. Mm-hmm. And if I say it, it generally makes it safer for someone else to jump in. Mm-hmm. And I remember once, it was face-to-face, not online, but I said that and it took many minutes, but one of the competing stakeholders said, I think we're all here with good intentions. And I think it's going to take us, we're not going to get it done next week like the government wants us to do. But I think we're all here with good intentions. And, and it was beautiful because it didn't solve it, but he helped pull it together saying, let's keep going. So I think you can try and do that online. And look, if someone's left, Miriam has left. What are we going to do about that? Or what are we going to do with that? Shall we continue? Shall we reconvene? How do we make sure we get Miriam's contribution? She's left. She's literally left or gone off. I think you have to call it, and it's tough, but it hasn't happened to me yet online.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? I think people are generally more genuine and understanding, but also I think generally avoiding difficult conversations online because it's so easy to avoid it.
Right.
And I think if someone physically leaves, then at least you have a clear sign that you can deal with. But having a group where you can feel, even through the screen, you can feel that something is wrong with the energy.
Yeah.
Because nobody actually contributes and you can feel the elephant.
Yeah.
But what can you do about it?
Even with all your clever improv things, shift the energy, do something completely different, throw out the agenda and get them to do something crazy and wacky. And if they don't, put them into pairs and get them to talk about something completely different, shift the energy, drop the topic, find something else. You probably have an agenda. So number 3 is not working. Let's just see let's take number 6. I usually have my agenda on sticky notes behind me, big sticky notes, so that they're aware it's flexible. And I would pull off and say, okay, well, we'll do this now, let's move to this. Clearly that's not working, or we've run out of steam on that one, so let's try this one. It hasn't happened to me online yet, but I think it's a case, same principles of shifting energy, not avoiding it, naming it if you can. And like I did with that face-to-face one, naming it and allowing enough time for a participant to contribute and see if they call it as well. I think, as you said, people are genuine online. I think they're probably more polite in some ways because of the technology. I think it's okay to have a bit of silence.
Mm-hmm. But name it, because otherwise everyone thinks it's IT problems.
So I say, I've got a blog where I call it All Ears, and I've invited people when they're talking over each other, really excited to, okay, just for the next 5 minutes, let's count to 3 before we jump in.
Yeah.
And so I'll go,
yeah,
and then see. Yeah.
I love how you combine the physical space around you with the online meeting, where you have the agenda on sticky notes and where you show signs and tennis balls. I really like that.
Yeah, I didn't have any prepared for you, but yes. And I'm looking at the time. We must be finished soon, you poor thing.
Yes. There's one question that I am always asking. I cannot skip that. What's your favorite exercise?
That was really hard. Oh, my hashtag, wonder. That's my hashtag, wonder. Yeah. If I had a hashtag, it'd be wonder. I wanted to share that one. I think my favorite exercise, one of my favorite exercises, I've got 2, I've done it with a group who I'm asked them to imagine 5 years from now and to write a thank you card to the architect. They were giving their opinion on a new community library. So I asked the group to create a card. So they had to draw, cut collage, use the right side of their brain for a bit. It helped stop them from, getting uptight about their library, and write a note to the architect. Imagine that they were at the opening of this new library 5 years from now, and what did that note say? Yes. They were beautiful. They stuck them all up on a sticky wall, and you can still do this online. I've put this in a proposal that I'm hopefully doing with a client soon, is I want to think about something as boring as strategic planning. Mm-hmm. In 5 years' time, what would your clients thank you for? What's the thank you card you want to get? And then also ask the clients to write a thank you card. Yeah. In 5 years' time, thank you for doing this. This has happened. And it's a lovely way to individually online. All they need is I ask them to bring cardboard or a bit of paper. They can cut up or they can draw, do a thank you card, write a note, show it to each other. You can just hold it up.
Oh, and this would be a beautiful mosaic then. You can
exactly. And then you take photos and put them up on your shared platform. Yeah. And it's a nice artifact for people afterwards. Yeah. So I think it's a nice combination of creativity, using the right side of your brain. It helps with any difficult conversations, or if people are quite emotional about something they love and care about. And it also forces them to think of the future. And then in this particular project, the architect sat there in the follow-up workshop like 2 months later and looked at all the thank you cards. Like it was in the report. So
that's nice.
Yeah. Does that make sense? Is that a clear enough example?
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. You're very inspired. I want to do that now.
And you can do it to thank the person, or if you're the organization, imagine what they say to you. Yeah. You can flip it. Yeah,
like that. We are running out of time.
I'm so sorry.
What? No, please don't. That's why you're here, right?
And it was fun. Yeah.
Yes. If someone, for a reason that I would not be able to understand, fell asleep after 2 minutes into the interview, just woke up and doesn't have time to listen to the hour again, what would you like them to know as a nutshell of our conversation?
What is a nutshell? Your history as a facilitator, your story as a facilitator, what that word even means. How do you negotiate the desire to have an enjoyable experience but tackle the difficult topic that is at hand, but still have participants leaving that was enjoyable, that was productive. We may not have agreed, but the process was good. How can you make facilitation of difficult conversations more like skiing and surfing? So you have a good run, but you enjoy the challenges along the way. And to use the physical space around your screen with as much adventure as you can, and to use, and I didn't show it tonight, to use big words and drawings and shake it up for your participants. Yeah, I think that might be it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for
Thank you.
Sharing your learnings, your experience. I think it was very interesting also to hear your perspective from being a participant in these meetings and what got you to write Hum and share it with us. I will put all the links into the show notes so that the audience can check out your book and your profile.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm looking forward to seeing you facilitating hosting at Never Done Before.
Maybe I'll do something physical. You've got to run. Get on with your day. Thank you so much. And thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. It was fun.
Yes, it was. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for staying tuned and listening to the show. I appreciate your attention as I know how busy you are. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and engage by sharing your comments and thoughts, and visit workshops.work to download the one-page summary. I'm looking forward to seeing you back at the next episode, and I wish you a fruitful day.